James Carter stood rigid in the defendant's box. His heart was pounding so hard, he barely heard the echo of the judge's gavel on the polished wood. 20 years of dedicated service as an intelligence agent, countless commendations, and an unblemished record, now overshadowed by a single verdict: guilty of corruption. The courtroom fell silent, a vacuum where James's shock reverberated. He glanced behind him, searching for the comforting presence of Rex, his loyal K9 partner. Across the aisle, Rex, a majestic German shepherd, shifted on his paws, ears alert and gaze fixed solely on James. The knowledge that this might be the last time they would see each other stung more than the prison sentence itself. As the judge rose, preparing to leave, James found his voice, though it wavered. "Your Honor," he said, his tone tinted with desperation. "Please. I need just a moment with my dog, Rex. Let me say goodbye." A startled hush swept through the spectators. The judge paused, studied James's expression, and gave a curt nod. "You have 3 minutes," he said. An officer led Rex over, and the dog bounded forward, pressing his muzzle against James's chest. James buried his face in Rex's fur, inhaling the familiar scent. "I'm sorry, buddy," he whispered. "I swear I didn't do this." He felt Rex's tail thumping against his leg, as if to offer unwavering support, no matter what. Rex suddenly froze, muscles taut. He lowered his head and sniffed around the heel of James's shoe. With a swift jerk, Rex latched onto the thick black material, growling low in his throat. Confused, James tried to steady himself. "Rex, hey, what's going on?" An officer asked, stepping forward. The dog refused to let go. His teeth bore down into the padding, then dislodged a small, hard object embedded near the inner heel. It clattered onto the courthouse floor. A discreet recording device, no larger than a thumb drive? Gasps spread like ripples through the courtroom. A bailiff picked up the tiny device, holding it out for everyone to see. The judge's brows knitted together. "What is that? Where did it come from?" Murmurs turned to exclamations as the bailiff clicked a button on the device. Distorted voices hissed through the speaker, but soon they became alarmingly clear. The conversation was about planting evidence, specific details about how best to frame James Carter, the perfect scapegoat. The voice leading the scheme belonged to none other than Captain Ray Ethan, James's longtime supervisor and mentor. Stunned, James looked at Rex, marveling that his K9 partner had discovered something so crucial in this brief moment of farewell. For the first time since his arrest, a glimmer of hope flickered in his chest. The judge's hammer fell again, calling for silence. Sweat beaded on the prosecutor's forehead. "Your Honor, this device was not part of the official evidence. We have no verification of its source." The judge silenced him with a stern glare. "We will verify it. For now, this new discovery cannot be ignored." He turned to James. "Mr. James, you will remain in temporary custody while this evidence is examined. But rest assured, we are reopening your case." Relief warred with anger inside James. He turned and gently stroked Rex's head. "Good job, buddy," he whispered as the officer guided the dog away. In Rex's soulful eyes, James found renewed determination to clear his name. A few hours later, several officials huddled around a laptop connected to the newly discovered device. Static came from the speakers. Then Ethan's familiar voice rang out. "Make it look clean." "Carter has a spotless record. He'll never see it coming. Once we pin it on him, no one will suspect me." An appalled hush blanketed the room. Captain Ray Ethan had recruited James and overseen many of his missions. How could he betray a loyal agent? James's stomach twisted as he listened. More voices chimed in, suggesting ways to fabricate evidence and ensuring that certain officials were taken care of. News traveled fast through the courthouse. Captain Ethan, a tall, broad-shouldered man, had been waiting outside for confirmation that James was locked away. Instead, he was summoned by the judge, the gravity in the bailiff's tone making Ethan visibly tense. Inside the chambers, the judge played the recording again. With each incriminating word, Ethan's complexion paled. He tried to stammer excuses, claiming the audio was doctored, an attempt to smear his reputation. But the judge remained stony-faced. "Captain Ethan," the judge said coolly, "you are being detained for questioning related to the fabrication of evidence and corruption within this department." Ethan's face hardened. "You have no idea who you're up against," he muttered, as officers stepped in to restrain him. A hush fell as he was led away, leaving behind a cloud of unanswered questions. While Ethan was taken into custody, Officer Sophie Mitchell, an old friend of James's, was tasked with looking after Rex. She noticed Rex sniffing around the precinct's evidence room and a small library shelf used for case archives. Intrigued, she followed the dog, who pawed at a worn, nondescript book. Inside, a hole is cut in the middle of the book. Sophie found a memory card labeled with cryptic initials. Curious and alarmed, she connected it to a computer. Instantly, a series of digital documents popped up: deposit slips, transaction records, and emails. They detailed large sums of money exchanged between Ethan and a network of unnamed politicians. Terms like monthly retainer and hush fund dotted the files, unmasking a web of bribery far more extensive than anyone imagined. She quickly backed up the files before carefully returning the memory card to the book, not wanting to rouse suspicion prematurely. Sophie wasted no time. She and Rex went straight to the judge, who had convened an emergency meeting with Internal Affairs. The judge's face grew darker with each passing document he read. "This isn't just about Captain Ethan," Sophie explained, voice trembling with a mixture of excitement and dread. "There are powerful people involved, politicians possibly from higher offices." The judge nodded grimly. "We'll need James Carter's help to navigate these intelligence connections." He ordered James's immediate release, a wave of relief washing over Sophie when she heard the news. James stepped out of his holding cell with the small bag of personal effects returned to him. Though he was free pending further investigation, the sting of betrayal weighed on him. Sophie greeted him alongside Rex, who bounded forward, tail wagging. The dog pressed his nose into James's hand as if to say, "Welcome back." Sophie briefed James on the memory card, the names involved, and how deep the conspiracy might run. Even for a seasoned intelligence agent, it was daunting. "It's bigger than Ethan," she warned. "He's just a piece of this puzzle." James's jaw tightened. "Then we'll find the rest of the pieces. All of them." Over the next few days, James, Sophie, and a small team of trusted officers pored over reams of data. It depicted a vast network: high-ranking officers, local politicians, and even known criminals. Accounts were falsified, evidence tampered with, and innocent people framed. James realized with a shiver that his conviction was far from the first under these orchestrated tactics. Rex dozed at their feet, only waking to sniff out new evidence. His presence gave James confidence. If they could unravel one conspiracy, they could unravel them all. Sophie suggested contacting federal authorities immediately, but James raised a hand in caution. "If word gets out to the wrong ears, these people will scatter," he said. "We have to gather definitive evidence first." Despite the tension, they agreed. They would bide their time, collecting every scrap of information to build an airtight case. Yet each passing hour felt like a countdown to disaster, especially with the knowledge that many officials, possibly still working in the precinct, were compromised. James's worst fears began to materialize when a plain envelope arrived at his temporary lodging. Inside, a single note in block letters read, "Stop or lose it all." No signature, no return address. 2 days later, another letter appeared, referencing details only an inside source would know about James's schedule. He swallowed hard. "Look all around for anyone suspicious," When he showed Sophie, her face blanched. "We're close," she said. "They're trying to scare us." That very night, armed men raided the makeshift operations room James and Sophie had set up in a hotel conference suite. A hail of bullets shattered windows and upended tables. The muzzle flash illuminated the frantic faces of James, Sophie, and Rex as they scrambled for cover. Rex's furious barking alerted James to an attacker creeping along the side wall. James fired a warning shot, forcing the assailant to dive behind an overturned desk. Amid the chaos, Sophie clutched the evidence, a small steel briefcase containing the memory card and backups of critical documents. Through shattered glass, they saw more men converging on the building. The situation looked dire. But with a combination of precise gunfire, strategic movement, and Rex's keen senses, the trio managed to force an escape route out the back. A black SUV screeched to a halt, driven by a trusted ally from Internal Affairs, whisking them away before the attackers could regroup. Fearing electronic surveillance, the group retreated to a remote, forested location, a small cave system once used by local rangers. By lantern light, Sophie spread out a map, pointing at a list of names. "This leads straight to someone codenamed CT. Based on these documents, CT is funneling money through shell corporations, controlling politicians, and manipulating law enforcement." James nodded. "CT must be the mastermind." He patted Rex, who sat calmly despite the tension. "We have to be sure we link CT directly to Ethan and the rest of them." They worked tirelessly, matching transaction IDs. The scope was terrifying. Entire city contracts rigged, private security firms acting as muscle, top officials bribed to keep quiet. Their only hope of bringing the conspiracy down was to present undeniable proof to the highest authorities once they confirmed CT's true identity. Suddenly, Rex began whining and scratching at his own harness. Sophie leaned in and froze. A tiny metallic object protruded from the lining, a tracking device. A wave of horror swept over them. The conspirators must have planted it on Rex at some point, maybe during the courthouse chaos or while he was kenneled. "We have to move," James said. "They know exactly where we are." Before they could gather their files, flashlights flickered at the cave's entrance. A volley of gunshots ricocheted off the stone walls. Rex barked ferociously, and James returned fire with measured bursts. Sophie ducked behind a rocky outcrop, clutching the evidence-packed briefcase. In the confined space, the firefight was deafening. One intruder lunged close, only to be taken down by a swift shot from James. Another attacker aimed at Sophie, but Rex sprang forward, teeth bared, knocking the assailant's weapon aside. The standoff felt endless, but finally, the wail of sirens cut through the night. Reinforcements from Internal Affairs and local state troopers, alerted by James's ally, descended upon the cave. The remaining attackers surrendered, forced to drop their weapons. Sophie emerged, dust-covered but unyielding, still clutching the briefcase. Over the next 48 hours, the files were sent to multiple trusted journalists, ensuring the story couldn't be suppressed. A media firestorm erupted. Captain Ethan's confession, combined with the memory card's data, exposed a sprawling network of corruption. The public learned that CT was actually Colin Taylor, a powerful local politician who had climbed the ranks through bribes and blackmail. One by one, law enforcement officials, politicians, and criminals tied to Taylor were arrested. Morning news programs and primetime segments splashed James's face across the nation, hailing him as a man who risked everything to stand up for the truth. The day after the final wave of arrests, James stood outside the same courthouse where he had once been, branded a criminal. This time, the crowd of reporters clamored not for his guilt, but for his story of bravery and perseverance. Microphones thrust toward him, cameras capturing every word. He thanked Sophie for her vigilance and unwavering support. He credited Rex for his life-saving instincts. "Without Rex," James said, voice husky with emotion, I never would have discovered that recording device, and we might never have found out the truth behind all this corruption. Once the press conference ended, James walked to a small park across from the courthouse. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in soft orange hues. He tossed a tennis ball, and Rex bounded after it, tail wagging. In that simple moment, James felt the tightness in his chest begin to ease. Justice had been served, and he was finally free to enjoy the life he had fought so hard to reclaim. Behind them, the courthouse loomed, a reminder that justice, while often delayed, could still triumph. James couldn't change the scars left by betrayal, but he found solace in the knowledge that the system could still right a profound wrong, and that unwavering loyalty, both human and canine, was more powerful than any conspiracy. In the months to come, James would use his expertise to help root out the remaining tendrils of corruption uncovered in the case files. Sophie would earn a promotion for her role, and Rex would receive departmental honors for extraordinary service. Yet, for James, the greatest reward was a simple, peace-filled afternoon with his K9 companion, no longer overshadowed by fear, but instead shining with the bright promise of a future free from injustice. If it touches your heart, please comment how you feel and rate it from 1 to 10. If you love Rex the dog, send a super sticker, click the icon below the video, choose your favorite sticker, set the quantity, and confirm your support. Help us bring more emotional stories. Thank you for being with us.